Marcus stood in the middle of the crowded school gymnasium, his daughter Emma's hand tucked safely in his. The annual spring fair was in full swing, with colourful streamers hanging from the ceiling and the smell of popcorn filling the air. As a single dad for the past 3 years, Marcus had become a fixture at these events, always the reliable parent volunteer, always the one who showed up. "Dad, can I go play the ring toss?" Emma's bright eyes looked up at him pleadingly. At 8 years old, she was his entire world, the reason he got up every morning and the reason he kept pushing forward after his wife had left them both behind. "Sure, sweetheart, I'll be right here at the bake sale table." Marcus watched her skip away, her pigtails bouncing with each step. He turned back to arranging cookies on paper plates, trying to make them look presentable, despite his complete lack of artistic ability. "Those look terrible," a voice said from beside him. Marcus looked up to find Sarah Mitchell standing there, a slight smile playing at her lips. She was Emma's teacher, and over the past school year, Marcus had found himself looking forward to parent-teacher conferences more than any grown man probably should. With her auburn hair pulled back in a ponytail and a splash of flour on her cheek from helping in the kitchen, she looked beautiful in that effortless way that made his heart skip. "Wow, thanks for the confidence boost," Marcus replied with a laugh, deliberately arranging the cookies even more haphazardly. "I'll have you know that presentation is highly overrated. It's all about taste." Sarah picked up one of his lopsided chocolate chip cookies and took a bite. Her eyes widened. "Okay, I'll admit it. These are actually incredible. Did you make them?" "Emma and I made them together last night. Well, she mostly ate the dough while I did the actual baking." Marcus felt a warmth spreading through his chest that had nothing to do with the stuffy gymnasium. For the next hour, they worked side by side at the bake sale table, their conversation flowing easily between customers. Sarah told him about her dream of opening a small bookstore cafe someday, while Marcus shared stories about the chaos of raising a daughter alone and running his small construction business. There was something comfortable about being around her, something that made him forget about the walls he'd carefully built around his heart. As the evening wound down and the crowd began to thin, Emma ran up with her best friend Lucy. "Miss Mitchell, Dad, Lucy's mom said we could have a sleepover tonight. Can I go? Please, please, please." Marcus looked at Sarah, who nodded encouragingly. "Lucy's mom already texted me. She said she'd love to have Emma over." "All right, sweetheart, but you have to promise to actually sleep at some point tonight." Emma squealed with delight and hugged him tightly before running off with Lucy. Marcus watched her go, feeling the familiar pang of how quickly she was growing up. "You're a good dad," Sarah said softly, beginning to pack up the leftover baked goods. "Emma talks about you all the time in class. The way her face lights up when she mentions you, it's really special." Marcus felt his throat tighten with emotion. Being a single parent meant constantly wondering if he was doing enough, if he was being enough for his daughter. "I try. Some days are harder than others, but she makes it worth it." They worked together in comfortable silence, cleaning up the table and storing the remaining items. The gymnasium had mostly emptied out now, with just a few volunteers sweeping up and taking down decorations. The overhead lights had been dimmed, casting long shadows across the polished floor. "Hey, Marcus." Sarah's voice had a nervous quality to it that he hadn't heard before. She was fidgeting with the hem of her cardigan, not quite meeting his eyes. "Yeah? I've really enjoyed getting to know you this year, and I was wondering, well, I was thinking that maybe we could grab coffee sometime, just the two of us." Marcus felt his heart rate accelerate. It had been so long since he'd even considered dating. After his ex-wife had walked out, claiming she wasn't ready for the responsibility of being a mother, he'd thrown himself completely into being there for Emma. Dating had seemed like a complication he didn't need, a risk he wasn't willing to take. But standing there looking at Sarah's hopeful expression, something shifted inside him. "I'd really like that," he found himself saying. Sarah's face broke into a radiant smile. Really? I was so nervous you'd say no. Why would I say no? You're smart, funny, beautiful, and you actually tolerate my terrible cookie arrangements. Marcus was surprised by his own boldness, but something about Sarah made him want to try again, to be brave. They exchanged numbers and made plans to meet at the local coffee shop the following Saturday. As Marcus drove home alone that night, the house feeling emptier than usual without Emma's chatter filling the silence, he couldn't stop smiling. For the first time in 3 years, he felt a flutter of excitement about something other than his daughter's next soccer game or school performance. Saturday arrived faster than Marcus expected. He'd spent an embarrassing amount of time that morning trying to decide what to wear, finally settling on jeans and a dark blue button-down that Emma had declared made him look not totally old. He'd arrived at the coffee shop 10 minutes early, his palms sweating like he was a teenager on his first date. Sarah walked in right on time, wearing a flowing sundress that made her look like something out of a movie. They ordered their drinks and found a quiet corner table. And just like at the school fair, conversation flowed naturally. They talked about everything from their favorite books to their most embarrassing moments, to their hopes for the future. "Can I ask you something?" Sarah said, wrapping her hands around her coffee mug. "What happened with Emma's mom? You don't have to answer if it's too personal." Marcus had known this question would come eventually. He took a deep breath. "She left when Emma was 5. Just came home one day and said she'd made a mistake, that she'd never really wanted to be a mother, that she felt trapped. She packed a bag and left. We haven't heard from her since." "I'm so sorry, Marcus. That must have been devastating." "It was, but honestly the hardest part wasn't what it did to me. It was watching Emma ask for her mom every night for months, not understanding why she wasn't coming back. That's what really broke me." Marcus felt the familiar ache in his chest, but somehow it felt lighter sharing it with Sarah. Sarah reached across the table and placed her hand over his. "Emma is lucky to have you. Not every parent would step up the way you did." They stayed at the coffee shop for 3 hours, only leaving when the barista started pointedly cleaning around them. As they stood outside on the sidewalk, the afternoon sun casting golden light across the street, Marcus felt a boldness he hadn't experienced in years. "I had a really great time today," he said, suddenly nervous again. "Me too. Maybe we could do this again, soon?" Sarah's eyes sparkled with hope. "Definitely. How about dinner next weekend? There's this Italian place downtown that I've been wanting to try." "That sounds perfect." They exchanged an awkward but sweet hug, and Marcus drove home feeling like he was floating. Emma was already back from her sleepover, and she immediately pounced on him with questions about where he'd been. When he told her he'd gone to coffee with her teacher, Emma's eyes went wide with excitement, and she started planning their wedding on the spot. Marcus laughed and told her to slow down, but secretly he was already imagining more possibilities than he probably should. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Marcus and Sarah went on 4 more dates, each one better than the last. They took Emma to the zoo one Saturday, and watching Sarah and his daughter laugh together at the penguins made Marcus's heart feel like it might burst. Emma adored Sarah, and the feeling was clearly mutual. But Marcus was careful. He didn't invite Sarah over late at night, didn't rush into anything physical beyond hand-holding and a few brief kisses goodbye. He had Emma to think about, and he wasn't going to introduce someone into their lives who wasn't going to stick around. He'd seen what losing her mother had done to his daughter, and he'd do anything to protect her from that kind of pain again. On their 5th date, they went to a local carnival that had set up in the park. The evening air was warm, filled with the sounds of children screaming on rides and carnival barkers calling out prizes. Marcus won Sarah a stuffed elephant at the ring toss, making her laugh when he jokingly flexed his muscles and claimed it was all due to his superior athletic ability. They walked through the carnival eating cotton candy, their fingers intertwined. It felt natural, right? Like they'd been doing this for years instead of weeks. As they approached the Ferris wheel, Sarah stopped and turned to him. "Marcus, I need to tell you something." Her expression was serious, and Marcus felt a spike of anxiety. "I'm really falling for you, like really falling. And I know we've been taking things slow, which I completely understand and respect, but I need you to know that I'm all in here. I'm not going anywhere." Marcus felt emotion welling up in his chest. "Sarah, I'm falling for you too. You have no idea how much you've changed my life in just these few weeks." She smiled up at him, and in that moment, with the carnival lights twinkling around them and the sound of music playing in the distance, Marcus felt something shift. They rode the Ferris wheel, and at the very top, with the whole town spread out below them like a sea of lights, Sarah leaned her head on his shoulder. "This is perfect," she whispered. "Yeah," Marcus agreed, wrapping his arm around her. "It really is." And as the weeks turned into months, Marcus and Sarah's relationship deepened. They fell into a comfortable rhythm where Sarah would come over for dinner twice a week, and they'd all cook together, Emma acting as their enthusiastic sous chef who mostly just taste-tested everything. On weekends, they'd go on little adventures to nearby towns, hiking trails or museums. Marcus found himself opening up to Sarah in ways he hadn't with anyone since his ex-wife had left. He told her about his fears of not being enough for Emma, about the nights he'd cried alone in the bathroom after putting his daughter to bed because he felt so overwhelmed. Sarah listened without judgment, offering comfort and support. In turn, Sarah shared her own vulnerabilities. She told him about her family's financial struggles growing up, about how she'd worked 3 jobs to put herself through college, about her fear that she'd never find someone who truly understood her dreams. With Marcus, she felt seen in a way she never had before. One evening in late summer, after Emma had gone to bed, Marcus and Sarah sat on the front porch swing, watching fireflies dance in the yard. The air was thick and humid, and the sound of crickets created a peaceful backdrop. "I've been thinking," Sarah said, her voice soft, "about us, about where this is going." Marcus felt his stomach clench. "Yeah, what have you been thinking?" "I love what we have. I love spending time with you and Emma. I love how we've built this little family together." She paused, turning to look at him directly. "But Marcus, we've been dating for almost 4 months now, and you haven't kissed me. I mean really kissed me. Just those quick pecks goodbye." Marcus felt heat rising in his cheeks. He'd been aware of it, of course. Every time they got close, every time the moment seemed right, he'd pull back. Not because he didn't want to, but because he was terrified of what it would mean, of the vulnerability it would require. "I know," he said quietly. "I'm sorry. It's not that I don't want to. I do, trust me. It's just that when I let myself get close to someone before, when I let my guard down, she left. And it destroyed me, but more than that, it destroyed Emma." Sarah took his hand in hers. "Marcus, I understand your fear. I really do. But I'm not her. I've shown up every single day for 4 months. I'm not going anywhere. I know you're not her. In my head, I know that. But there's this part of me that's just terrified of taking that next step, of being that vulnerable again." They sat in silence for a moment, the swing creaking gently beneath them. Then Sarah stood up, tugging him to his feet. She placed his hands on her waist and wrapped her arms around his neck, looking up at him with a mischievous glint in her eyes. "Marcus Jameson, you're being ridiculous," she said with a laugh. "You wouldn't dare to kiss me." Something about the challenge in her voice, the playful way she was looking at him, broke through all his carefully constructed walls. Before he could overthink it, before his fear could talk him out of it, Marcus pulled her close and kissed her. It wasn't a quick peck or a cautious brush of lips. It was a real kiss, deep and full of all the emotion he'd been holding back for months. Sarah melted into him, her fingers tangling in his hair, and for a moment the whole world disappeared. There was just the two of them, the summer night, and the feeling of finally letting go of the fear that had been holding him back. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Sarah was smiling so widely her eyes were crinkled at the corners. "See? Was that so hard?" Marcus laughed, resting his forehead against hers. "You dare me to kiss you and then act smug about it? That's a dangerous game, Miss Mitchell. I'm a teacher. Reverse psychology is kind of my specialty." She kissed him again, softer this time, sweet and full of promise. They stayed on the porch for another hour, talking and kissing and making plans for the future. Marcus felt lighter than he had in years, like a weight he'd been carrying had finally been lifted. When Sarah left that night, he stood in the doorway watching her drive away, already counting down the hours until he'd see her again. The next morning, Emma bounded into his room at the crack of dawn, as she did every Sunday. "Dad! Dad! Can we make pancakes? The chocolate chip ones." Marcus groaned and pulled his pillow over his face, but he was smiling. "Give me 5 minutes, kiddo." As they cooked breakfast together, flour somehow ending up everywhere except in the bowl, Emma chattered about her week. Then, in that way kids have of being far too perceptive, she asked, "Dad, are you going to marry Miss Mitchell?" Marcus nearly dropped the spatula. "What? Emma, we're just dating. It's way too early to think about that." "But you like her, right? Like, really like her. And she likes you too, I can tell. She looks at you the way Princess Anna looks at Kristoff in Frozen." Marcus couldn't help but laugh. "You're 8 years old. How are you already an expert on relationships?" "I'm very mature for my age," Emma said seriously, then ruined the effect by getting syrup all over her face. But as Marcus watched his daughter eat her pancakes, her legs swinging happily under the table, he allowed himself to imagine it. A future with Sarah, not just as his girlfriend but as a permanent part of their family. That fall, as the leaves turned golden and the air grew crisp, Marcus and Sarah's relationship continued to flourish. They'd become that couple that everyone loved to be around, their happiness infectious. Sarah had essentially become a co-parent to Emma, attending her school events, helping with homework, and tucking her in at night when she stayed over. One October evening, Marcus decided it was time. He'd been carrying the ring around in his pocket for 2 weeks, waiting for the perfect moment. He'd enlisted Emma's help in planning, and his daughter had been practically vibrating with excitement, barely able to keep the secret. They went back to the park where the carnival had been, the same place where Sarah had dared him to kiss her all those months ago. Marcus had set up a picnic under the big oak tree, with fairy lights strung in the branches above. Emma was hiding behind a nearby tree with her camera, ready to capture the moment. "Marcus, this is beautiful," Sarah said, her eyes taking in the romantic setup. "What's the occasion?" "No occasion. I just wanted to do something special for you." Marcus felt his heart pounding as he took her hand. "Sarah, before I met you, I thought my life was complete. I had Emma, my business, and that was enough. I'd convinced myself that I didn't need anything else, that wanting more was too risky." Sarah's eyes were already starting to glisten with tears, as if she knew where this was going. "But then you walked into my life, or I guess I should say, Emma walked into your classroom, and everything changed. You didn't just change my life, you made it bigger, fuller, more vibrant. You taught me that being brave enough to love again isn't weakness, it's strength. You showed up every single day and proved that not everyone leaves." Marcus got down on one knee, pulling the ring from his pocket. Behind the tree, he could hear Emma's excited squeal, barely muffled. Sarah's hands flew to her mouth, tears now streaming down her face. "Sarah Mitchell, would you marry me? Would you take on this slightly chaotic, often messy, but absolutely love-filled life with me and Emma?" "Yes," Sarah was nodding emphatically before he'd even finished the question. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." Marcus slipped the ring onto her finger, and as he stood up, Sarah threw her arms around him, kissing him deeply. Emma came running out from behind the tree, camera forgotten, crashing into both of them for a group hug. "Does this mean you're going to be my mom?" Emma asked, looking up at Sarah with hopeful eyes. Sarah knelt down to Emma's level, cupping the little girl's face in her hands. "If you'll have me, sweetheart, I would be honored to be your mom." Emma launched herself into Sarah's arms, and Marcus watched the two most important people in his world embrace, his eyes stinging with happy tears. This was his family, chosen and fought for, and built on a foundation of taking chances. 6 months later, they had a small wedding in the same park, under the same oak tree where Marcus had proposed. Emma was the flower girl, wearing a dress she'd picked out herself that was approximately 75% tulle. As Marcus watched Sarah walk down the aisle, the autumn sun making her hair glow like copper, he thought back to that night at the school carnival when he'd been so afraid to take a chance. In his vows, Marcus made everyone laugh when he said, "I'm so glad you dared me to kiss you that night. Best dare I ever accepted." Sarah grinned, squeezing his hands. "In my vows, I promise to keep daring you. To dare you to dream bigger, to dare you to let go of fear, to dare you to choose love every single day." "Deal," Marcus said, and kissed her before the officiant had even finished, making everyone cheer. At the reception, held in a nearby barn decorated with string lights and wildflowers, Emma gave a toast that she'd written herself. "My dad is the best dad in the whole world, and now Sarah is the best mom in the whole world. I used to think my family was small, but now I know it's perfect." As Marcus danced with his new wife, Emma spinning in circles around them with her friends, he reflected on how much his life had changed. That single dad who'd been afraid to risk his heart had learned that love wasn't about protecting yourself from pain. It was about being brave enough to stay open, to take chances, to dare to believe in happiness even after you've been hurt. Sarah leaned her head on his shoulder as they swayed to the music. "What are you thinking about?" "I'm thinking about how I almost let fear win, how I almost missed out on this because I was too scared to take that leap." "But you didn't," Sarah reminded him gently. "You were brave. You chose to trust again. Only because you challenged me, because you saw through my walls and dared me to break them down." She pulled back to look at him, her eyes shining with love and mischief. "Well, I have a new dare for you." "Oh yeah? What's that?" "I dare you to spend the rest of your life being this happy. I dare you to wake up every morning and choose this life, this love, this family. I dare you to never stop taking chances on us." Marcus kissed her softly, holding her close as their daughter danced around them and their friends and family celebrated nearby. "That's one dare I'll never back down from." As the evening turned to night and the stars came out above the barn, Marcus realized that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let someone in. Sometimes the biggest risk is worth taking, and sometimes when someone dares you to be vulnerable, to love again, to trust again, the only right answer is to prove them wrong about your fear and prove yourself right about your courage. He'd been a single dad, scared and scarred, convinced his story had already been written. But Sarah had shown him that life always has room for new chapters, for plot twists, for unexpected happy endings. All he'd had to do was dare to believe it was possible. If you enjoyed this story, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more heartwarming tales. I'd love to know where in the world you're watching from, so drop your country or city in the comments below. It's amazing to connect with viewers from all around the globe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.